It was a freezing cold winter day in November 1966. I was in Antwerp, standing on deck at the rails of a ship owned by the Compagnie Maritime Belge. The name of the ship was the Leopoldville. My husband was standing close by me, and I held my 3-month-old baby James in my arms. Only a week ago we were standing on the deck of another ship in the port of Belfast, waving goodbye to friends and family. Now we were going through a repeat performance, this time waving to friends we had made while studying a year ago in Brussels. We had been studying French and Bantu languages in preparation for going to the Belgian Congo as missionaries. James was conceived during our 9-month stay in Brussels. We called him our little Brussels sprout. As the ship moved away from the dock and friends receded into the distance, I was shivering with cold and also with fear as I contemplated what was ahead of me for the next 3 years. A strange land and a strange people in a recently war-torn country. After weeks on board ship and a life of unaccustomed luxury, we approached the shores of Africa. The River Congo seemed to be coming out to meet us, a broad stream of red-brown muddy water. It flows with such a powerful force that it carries its fresh water miles out into the sea. Our ship slowed down and came to a stop. I went on deck to see what was happening. A small boat was approaching our ship. This boat was bringing a pilot to us, who would come on board and guide our captain up the mouth of the river to the port of Matadi. The small boat came up near to the side of our ship. I leaned over on the side of the rails for a better view. The pilot stepped from his boat, intending to stand on the small platform at the bottom of the ship. This platform was at the foot of steps leading up to the deck of the ship. As he stepped out, his boat moved on the swell of the waves, and he missed the platform and fell into the ocean. The pilot's boat drove around in circles for a while until they managed to rescue him, and eventually a rather wet pilot came on board. As we sailed up into the mouth of the river, we could feel the heavy moisture-laden air closing in upon us. The moisture seemed to cling to our skin. The feeling of never having a completely dry skin never left me until 3 years later, when on our way home by plane, we stepped off for a while at Geneva Airport. As I stepped off the plane, I felt as light as a bird flying in the sky. After disembarking at Matadi, we commenced the next stage of our journey, a precarious ride by train on a narrow single track. Both the track and the train were in a state of bad repair. The train seemed to be threatening to leave the track altogether at times as it tilted at near 45-degree angles to one side and the other. It broke down several times, and I was very relieved when at last we arrived in Kinshasa. We stayed a few days at a mission hostel while arranging tickets for the next stage of our journey by riverboat. If I was expecting a relaxing cruise on the river, I was sadly disappointed. We had to wait for hours on yet another dock, this time sitting on our luggage surrounded by strange smells in stifling heat, with no protection from the hot sun beating down on us. All around us were people speaking in a language we did not understand. Eventually, someone decided we could go on board the River Congo paddle steamer, which was pushing and pulling huge barges in front and behind. The barges were laden with cargo and people who seemed to be camping out on top of them. Our accommodation was a cabin in the middle of a row of cabins on the top deck. There was another row of cabins behind us, and our cabin was linked to the cabin behind us by a small room which served as bathroom and toilet. The doors which opened onto the bathroom on either side had no locks on them and were inclined to swing open unexpectedly at inconvenient moments. The boat was built with some kind of metal, and it was like living in an oven. There was a slight relief during the day because of a slight breeze due to the movement of the boat. In the evening, the boat stopped, and the still air was filled with the whining of the notorious river mosquitoes. They were hungry for our blood, So we closed the door and windows and sweated and stifled in the heat. The cabin was overrun with a special variety of Congo cockroaches, 2 to 3 inches long, light brown in colour, with wings and very smelly. I boiled water on a Primus stove to make up bottles of milk for James, and I sterilised bottles and teats by boiling them in a pan of water. I developed a high fever, accompanied with vomiting and diarrhoea, having to run to the toilet, which was by now overflowing, and spilling its contents onto the floor was not a very pleasant experience. The monotony of the journey was broken by the occasional stops on the way. We stopped at small towns and villages, and people came on board to buy and sell their goods. After 5 days, someone said we had come to our destination, Lulonga. To my surprise, the boat stopped in the middle of the river, far off from the shore, where the water was too shallow for the riverboat. I was wondering how we were supposed to get ashore, when, lo and behold, I saw a number of dug-out canoes coming toward us. As they approached the side of our boat, I looked down and saw one canoe with some people in it waving to us enthusiastically and beckoning to us to jump down. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. It was a long way down, a very long way down, and the little canoe bobbing about in the water seemed far too narrow for my liking. I said to my husband, "I can't do this." He philosophically said, "Well, we either jump or stay on board the boat. We have no alternative." I half-handed, half-dropped James down to outstretched arms, and when I realised he was safe, I took the plunge and leapt into space. No one was more surprised than me when I landed safely in the canoe. I didn't know how to negotiate sitting down, so I remained standing up very unsteadily and gripping James tightly in my arms. The men paddled the canoe to shore. I was feeling very weak at the knees, and was glad when my feet were at last on solid ground. We had arrived at last.